you're failing your kids if you don't regularly sign them up for situations where they can be disappointed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's like, if you know they are not good enough to make the baseball team, you need to push them to try out.
Mm-hmm.
They need to be in a situation where they can deal with that disappointment, because disappointment in a controlled environment is actually the best way to develop the strength of grit and determination. And it's the same thing as going to the gym, right? You're putting strain and stress on your body in a controlled environment. And by doing that, you're reducing the level of uncontrolled stress that your body experiences. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of On the Exit. I'm Caleb. I'm here in the studio with Aaron. What's up, Aaron?
How's it going, Caleb? Good to see you again.
Yeah,
Here we are. So thanks, everybody, for tuning in. So we do these little short kind of podcast episodes. We just talk about stuff we're thinking about in the week. We just kind of go back and forth, hopefully add value to you guys as listeners. These are entrepreneurial topics: money, stewardship, building a business, team building, all these things.
Yeah.
There's something I wanted to talk about today for a few minutes, and it's the idea of, we're entrepreneurs. Our goal is to create wealth, to create cash flow. But how are you? And I'll guess I'll let you jump in and kind of and answer this, or throw out some tips, or what you're doing with your family is, how are you teaching your kids, or wanting to impart to them, the idea of entrepreneurship, the idea of managing money, multiplying it.
Yep.
We talk a lot about like financial freedom, right? And owning the exit and all these things. How are you instilling that into your children?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, this is something that I'm super passionate about. I actually fundamentally disagree with some of the concepts that I'm hearing from a lot of entrepreneurially minded people about how to teach their kids about money. I think, I'm a Christian. I follow the Bible, and the book of Proverbs talks about a wise man leaves an inheritance to his children's children. And so I don't believe in this mindset that I've heard coming kind of from the entrepreneurial camp of, I want to just teach my kids how to make it on their own. I don't want to leave them with anything. You know what I mean? I want to spend every dollar. I want to go to, I want to die without a dollar in my bank account. Like, I've heard people say that kind of thing. And I just don't agree with that. I think what that is an expression of is a lack of confidence in our ability to actually teach our kids to steward more than we were able to steward. Right. And so for me, I want to, create an inheritance for my children and give them something to manage, but also give them the skills to manage it, right, in a way that's really powerful. And so one of, a real simple way that I've done this with my girls is, and my son's 3, so he's not as easy to teach things to yet. But
he's not making millions yet.
Right, exactly. But a couple of things that we've done is, it starts with teaching them basic responsibility, right? Like, if you have something, you have to take care of it. And so, we had chickens and they had to feed them, simple things like that.
Yeah.
If they fed them, if they took care of them, then they got eggs from them. Getting eggs from them meant we could have eggs for breakfast.
Yeah,
that's
like
cool.
Eggs,
that kind of stuff. So able to see that. So another thing that we've done is, I've actually taken like 10 dimes. I've told them, hey, these 10 dimes, they're actually worth $1, right? It's really good math, right?
Okay.
And then I'll put like 3 jars in front of them and say, okay, here's what we do when you get 10 dimes. The first is we're going to give that. We're going to be generous, right? We're going to give a dime. Then
you have
we're gonna take
3 jars.
Yep, 3 jars. And then we're going to take 3 dimes and we're going to put it in the middle one. And that one is, we're going to save that and store that for later. And then the 7 or 8, the 6 dimes that are left over, right? 60%, you can do whatever you want to with those. You can spend those. You can whatever. And the
saving
idea,
30%, you got Dave Ramsey beat.
Yeah, and the goal.
He's a 10% game.
But the goal really is like,
they can
if
see
you
it
can
visually.
learn, they can see it visually, and if they can learn early on the value of generosity, number one, and the value of planning for the future and actually seeing something grow.
Yeah.
And I don't like to use. We do have like my wife's grandmother bought all 3 of our kids like piggy banks, and so we do use those, but. I actually use clear jars because I actually want them to see over time the impact
Mhm.
of if they keep filling it, it actually gets fuller, right? They can actually
Yeah.
see that,
Uh-huh.
so it's little things like that. And I'm not going to say that at their age, and my oldest is 5,
Yeah.
right? So it's not like I spend a lot of time right
It's just little
now,
things. It's
but it's just
lifestyle, it's small
exactly.
things.
I'll give you one more thing, and then I'd love to hear, some of your thoughts on what you're doing with your boys and some of your, your history in this area. But my another thing is really teaching them to delay gratification.
Mhm.
And my wife took my daughter Ivy on like a one-on-one date to Target. They
Mhm.
love doing that, and they went through Target, and Ivy saw these boots that lit up. They were like frozen or something like that, themed like snow
Uh-huh.
boots, and she just wanted them so bad. And mom was like, "Oh, we're not gonna get them today. We decided, we're just gonna come in here and look around. We're not gonna buy some." And
It's hard not to
Kayla,
buy
my
stuff
wife,
at
said,
Target.
"Oh yeah," and but Kayla, my wife, she was like, Ivy was freaking out. She had like a meltdown in there,
Oh,
right? Because
yeah.
she wanted them so bad. So she comes home, and I sat down with her and I talked to her. It was a Wednesday, and I said, "All right, Ivy, the boots were like $35, so they're not that. It's not like they were that big of a deal to
Mm.
just buy the boots." But I was like, "Okay, Ivy, if you remember about these boots and you still want them a week from now on next Wednesday, then I'll take you to Target and I'll buy them for you." And I've done that a bunch of times, and most of the time, she totally forgets about
She
it.
forgot.
She totally
Did she
forgets about
remember
it. She
about the
doesn't care
boots?
because it's not because, and I'm teaching her like
Yeah,
impulse decisions are not good decisions, right? Like that's number one. But this time she remembered.
she did,
The
yeah.
next week, she literally every day for a week, she asked me, "Is today Wednesday? Because I remember about the boots and I still want them. Is today Wednesday?" Like,
That's
and so when
funny.
we got there, I went and got her the boots,
Mhm.
right? Because she was willing to delay the gratification.
That's a huge
Then,
principle for,
yeah.
later in life.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. No
well,
impulse like reduce impulse decisions. If I can teach my kids, don't make impulse decisions
yeah.
and
It's the same
delay
thing you see
gratification.
later in life when it's just credit card spending and
Mhm.
no savings and it's all about what I can get now and
Yeah.
I make more income and I just get like a nicer car and how much mortgage can I get? I'll max that.
Yeah.
All those things, right? Um, let me ask you this with the idea of like I know, you know, for some people like myself included, not having an inheritance or really anything from
Mhm.
my parents. Not that they didn't want to. That wasn't their mindset. They just didn't have. They just don't
Yeah.
have the finances. So that kind of has caused me to just build from nothing, right?
Yeah.
And so I think that there are some qualities that are like formed
Mhm.
by doing that because like I just had to innovate.
Yeah.
And so that's one, not fear, but thought I have too. Like, okay, if my kids are older and they have this inheritance or whatever, like, how do I like to like make sure their mindset is good and the ability to steward, and so that they don't get like, I know like passive
Mhm.
or just like, well, I can just kind of, you know, I'm not talking about millions of dollars even, but maybe just even like enough where they're comfortable or it
Yeah.
just kind of like, I didn't have that, but I think that the fruit that came from that was good though
Yeah.
because I had to go out and figure it out, you know?
Yeah.
And so what are your thoughts there on that proverb you mentioned,
Yeah.
which I
No,
agree with, but how do you make sure that the character is still formed?
yeah. I think it's just like any other aspect of parenting. It's giving them it's giving kids a safe place to fail and to do those things, whereas for you in your and for me also,
Mhm.
very similarly in my entrepreneurial journey, wasn't like as a kid, wasn't really taught anything about money. And I saw for me how that's played out in a positive way, the way it has for you, right? Like
Mhm.
you were motivated, you were driven, you went out and you figured it out. You didn't have place to start. Like nobody handed you anything, and so you had to grit and grind.
Mhm.
But even my siblings, like that's not the case for them. They grew up in the same house, right? My oldest sister's in her, she's 40 something years old and still like can't pay her own bills.
So
Right. And so like I think for that, like
it's not so much whether or not you have the
right.
money. It's more about just your mindset and your
Exactly.
skills and your
And if I can teach my kids in a controlled environment
Mhm.
the skills that you got and that you learned in an uncontrolled environment,
Mhm.
right? You just had to go out and learn them.
Mhm.
You know, now there's something about grit and determination and things
Mhm.
like that that have to be instilled through like putting them in situations. I think Jesse Itzler talks about this really well. Like he obviously, him and, you know, Sarah Blake have made like
Mhm.
tons of money, right? Like they're billionaires but like so their kids obviously have some type of inheritance, but he talks about like, you're failing your kids if you don't regularly sign them up for situations where they can be disappointed.
Mhm.
You know, he's like, if you know they are not good enough to make the baseball team, then but they want to, like, you need to push them to try out.
Mhm.
They need to be in a situation where they can deal with that disappointment, because disappointment in a controlled environment is
Mhm.
actually the best way to develop the strength of grit and determination. And it's the same thing as going to the gym,
Mhm.
right? You're putting strain and stress on your body in a controlled environment, and by doing that, you're
Mhm.
reducing the level of uncontrolled stress that your body experiences.
No, that's good, and
So,
I like that idea too of like the controlled environment. And like in my upbringing, like my parents were actually Christian missionaries,
yeah,
so they were going overseas. They were doing a lot of stuff. So that was part of the reason why we lived check to check most of
hmm,
my life.
sure,
The work they were doing was amazing, but
yeah,
it was not a high paying,
of course,
and so kind of the opposite. It's like self funding, work really. And so, but they never had a poverty mindset.
yeah,
So that was something I really appreciated about my upbringing was, I learned just that, poverty, it doesn't have anything to do with how much money you have. It
hmm,
really doesn't. I know that's
yeah.
offensive and stuff, but I believe that like deeply. Like it's the same reason that, someone wins the lottery and they win millions and within a couple of years it's gone again.
Yeah,
And it's like, how in the world,
yeah,
you know, um, or people that, there's actually a crazy story of this Jewish family in Nazi Germany that
mhm,
had a large estate and they had to flee at World War II, and they I think they actually even went through a concentration camp and were liberated and came to the U.S.
mhm,
with nothing.
yeah,
But within 10 years, they had it all back again,
yeah,
and their mindset was wealth and stewardship, and so that's something that I want to instill to my kids.
yeah,
It's not about, I don't care what job they do. One of
yeah,
my kids is an artist.
mhm,
I don't know if he's going to make tons of money doing that. The other kid is, more engineer oriented. The
yeah,
other kid's, athletic oriented.
yeah,
But it's like it's not about about those things, or I guess that's what I'm not trying to like force them to do a certain thing that's going to make more money.
right, of
It's more
course,
about your mindset being right
mhm,
when it comes to stewarding and you know,
yeah,
and the way you think about it. And
yeah,
so, but yeah.
and it's figuring out how to turn your natural talents into marketable skills.
Hmm.
That's that's huge. That's key, and then build something around those skills.
Yeah.
And so,
What I do with the kids is we have some coin operated laundry
yeah,
washer and dryers.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And so the business I set up for the kids is we've got 4 washing machines and 4 dryers.
uh huh,
So it's like 8 machines. So we can make like $200 a month. So it's
yeah,
a lot of money for
yeah,
the kids. And so how we do it
yeah,
is, hey, I was like, guys, I bought these machines. They're in the basement of this apartment building.
mm-hmm,
I bought these machines, but you guys need to do all the work.
yeah,
So they have to go down there, get the coins out. They bring the plastic bags, take the coins out. I make them count the coins. We go to the bank, we put them in the coin counter thing. They
yeah,
track how much they made every 2 months. And I said, and some of them are like, well, I don't want to go this time. And I'm like, hey, you don't have to go, but then you don't get your split.
yeah,
So I make them do the work, and then we split it 50-50.
yeah,
So they get 50, it's three boys.
yeah,
They get 50% of the, quote profits.
uh huh,
I get 50%. They're like, Dad, you're making so much money, And I'm like, yeah, but I had to buy the machines.
yeah,
And it's
exactly,
just teaching them. It's
exactly,
very simple stuff.
yeah,
I'm like, guys, it's going to take me 2 or 3 years before I make a profit
yeah,
because I got to pay these machines off. And so and then of course they start thinking, they're like, how can we get more machines?
yeah,
and then they
Yeah.
start thinking, they're like, hey, when I'm just hanging out here, I'm playing Nintendo, building Lego, somebody's like washing clothes and I'm making a
Yeah.
coin right now.
Yeah.
And so they start, and so
Yeah.
it's like just trying to get them thinking. And so it was a cool opportunity that I had to,
Yeah.
it's not a profit generating venture for me.
Right. Of course.
It's
No.
a lesson for
The way to
them.
teach them.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so that's something I was doing with my boys, just
That's
to
awesome.
get them thinking along those lines, right? It's like
Super
Warren
cool.
Buffett says, until you figure out how to make money while you sleep, you'll work until you die.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And so it's figuring out how to have those income
Yeah.
streams going, right?
Absolutely.
So, yeah.
No, man, this has been a good conversation.
Yeah, it's really good.
I think so many people that, and our listeners, are entrepreneurially minded people, entrepreneurs building businesses, but they also want freedom so they can spend time with the ones that they love and care about the most, which is their family. And,
Yeah.
just having episodes like this where we're talking about, hey, as you're building that yourself, how can you be instilling the same types of values into your kids? And so I love this conversation. It's really good.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Awesome, guys. Thanks, everyone, for joining us on Own the Exit. Just appreciate all of you tuning in, and feel free to leave us a review, subscribe. That helps us get the word out. We're actually in the top 40 entrepreneur podcasts in the country.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
Very, very cool. And we just love it and hope that this added some value and kind of food for thought.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll see you guys next time.